guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. If you are new here, make sure you go ahead and hit the subscribe button to join the Happy Soul Tribe, and you are tuning in for a Faith Friday video where I usually discuss some sort of faith-related topic, or we do a quick Bible study. We talk about Jesus. And if you're not new here, welcome back, you guys. But let's go ahead and get into today's topic. Hey, get down. Get down, mister. My dog's crazy, so you guys are just gonna have to ignore him. He's probably gonna be situating back here. Oh, I just finished today, actually. I just finished the book of Job. And this is my first time in my adult life, probably ever in my life, that I've actually read all the way through the book of Job. I remember growing up in church that we would watch like the little VeggieTales videos or those kind of videos where it's like an animated version that kind of summarizes the story, sugarcoats it a little bit. I remember our Sunday school teachers teaching us about it, but I had never read it in fullness, never understood kind of all the depth that was in there. And guys, reading the book of Job took me almost 2 months. I have to be honest and say that it was really difficult for me at times because it's kind of a hard book to understand if you're just reading over it really fast. I was constantly rereading chapters that I had read the day before. I mean, it was just a lot to take in. It's also 42 chapters long. I'm going to do a quick summary of the book of Job, but I highly encourage that you go and do your own study. Read the whole book of Job. Don't just use this as your only source of information for the book of Job, and just ask God to help you understand it. Reach out, look for online resources that'll help you go further into it. But I'm going to give you a quick summary for those of you who maybe don't know the book of Job or haven't read it. Basically, Job is a very righteous man. He is very wealthy, very well known. He's like just an awesome dude, okay? And he's got a family, a loving, awesome family, an awesome wife. He shares his wealth with the people who need it. He gives to the needy. He feeds the hungry. People come. He has these crazy feasts. Like, he's just a wealthy man, but uses his wealth for God's glory. He loves the Lord, and everyone who knows him knows that about him. The story starts off with Satan implying to God that the only reason that Job is so righteous or remains in spiritual integrity is because he has such an awesome life and because he's wealthy and, you know, he doesn't have anything wrong or anything to complain about or to be mad at God about. And so God allows Satan to test Job's spiritual integrity. Then the story really begins. Job loses literally everything. And I mean everything. His wealth, his farm, his servants, his family, his children. He loses everything. Still, he praises God. He remains in spiritual integrity. So then Satan talks to God again and basically like, well, Job's got his integrity still, but he still praises your name, whatever. So God allows Satan to further mess with Job. And Satan then attacks his physical health. So at the end of the day, at least Job had his physical health, right? Wrong. Then Job gets this freakish illness, miserable illness. It tells us in the book, it says that for 7 nights, 7 days in a row, Job just laid down in agony, and his friends just kind of sat around him and didn't really know how to comfort him. He was covered in sores, and he just couldn't get any rest. A lot of his time is spent expressing how much physical pain, emotional pain that he is going through. It is absolutely excruciating. He even says that he regrets the day that he was born. He would rather not be born than endure this kind of stuff. The worst possible pain you could think of, Job was going through. Imagine losing every single thing that you had and then losing your physical health as well, and just at that point probably thinking, is there a reason to live? So there's all that. Job has these friends who come around him and they tell him, surely this is because of unconfessed, unrepented sin. This is a consequence of your sin. Just confess your sin to God and he'll take this away from you. And Job just keeps saying, no, this is not because of my sin. Job just keeps kind of defending God and defending and saying that it's not a result of Job's sin. It's just God doing what God's gonna do. Job also asks God many, many times, like, why have you done this? He's angry, he's upset, he's hurting, and it makes a point to say that Job never sinned in what he said. His friends continually tell him, this is because of sin, Job, surely you're not righteous like you think you are. You have something, there's something wrong in your relationship with the Lord, that's why this has happened to you. And then there's this one, and his name is Elihu. Let me make sure I'm saying that right. You know how Bible names be? Yeah, Elihu. In chapter 32 is when Elihu starts talking. He has stayed silent the whole time. He's a little bit younger than all of Job's friends, and so he was letting their wisdom speak for them, you know. And he comes in and basically says, everything that you guys have said is false, and we can't understand the ways of the Lord. His ways are higher than ours. We don't know why he's doing this, and we can't know why he's doing this, and it's not our job to know why he's doing this. Then God finally chimes in. God chimes in with the greatest comeback of all time. Like, it's just so epic when God finally does chime in, which is in chapter 38 is when God finally speaks up. And he never answers the question, why I'm doing this to you, why I allowed this to happen to you, Job, why this is going on. But instead, he just reminds them of his power. He just reminds them who he is, how epic he is, how powerful he is, and what he's done. I just imagine, like, if God stepped up and said this to me, I would feel so small and dumb. Like, I really would just feel so small. Brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Basically just reminding them, I am God. I am the Lord. I'm sovereign. I have power. I make everything happen. Like, the world exists because of me. I set the moon in the sky and the stars in place. I made the oceans start and end. Like, I am the Lord. He reminds them of who he is, and then goes to point out that Job's friends, who were kind of just implying that this was as a result of Job's sin, it was like wickedness, it was the consequences of his wickedness coming into action, this is why it happened to him. God points out, no, you guys were wrong. You have not spoken truth about me. Job has spoken truth about me. And then Job prayed for his friends, and then the Lord restored his fortunes and gave him twice as much as he had before. His friends consoled him over all the trouble that the Lord had brought. The Lord blessed the latter part of Job's life more than the former part. And it just goes on to tell him, like, he had thousands of animals, thousands of farm animals. He had a huge family, 7 sons, 3 daughters. They were beautiful, beautiful daughters. It says, nowhere in the land were there found women as beautiful as Job's daughters. After this, Job lived 140 years. He saw his children and their children to the 4th generation. And so Job died an old man and full of years. That was probably a long summary, but guys, it's 42 chapters of like full-on craziness. So I wanted to point out what I learned from the book of Job. And please go read it on your own. Please study it with someone. Don't use this as your only source of information for that book. I just really want you guys to read it and hear it for yourself. So what I learned is bad things 100% happen to good people. I mean, it does. And that's a question that a lot of people ask when it comes to Christianity and when it comes to God is, if God's so good, then why does he let bad things happen to good people? And the answer is, we do not know. We will never know truly why. It's not our job to ask the question why, and it's not his job to answer. His ways are higher than ours. We will never understand his ways. But I can say bad things happen to good people and good things come out of it. God's name will be glorified. God's name will be exalted. His glory will be shown through it. People will come to know Jesus through it. It's a really hard thing to understand, especially when you might be the good person with bad things happening to you. Just remember, it doesn't mean that God is a bad God or that you are necessarily a bad person. Something bigger is happening. You are a tiny, tiny piece that's playing a part in a big story, a story to glorify him. And it's hard to focus on that when that's happening, but we have to. Number 2, Satan assumed that Job was only in love with the Lord and serving the Lord and living his life for him because of what Job had and because of how good Job's life was, and he was wrong. And I want to live my life like that. A good reminder to care just as much about your relationship with the Lord and just as much about Him and loving Him on the days that life is good, just as much on the days that life is just bad. Number 3 is that people from the outside assumed that because bad things were happening to Job, that he must have been a sinful person and this was a consequence of his sin. Yes, your sin has consequences. If you live your life as an alcoholic, you are going to have health issues and potentially die from alcoholism. There are consequences to our actions, natural consequences to each action that you decide to make, good and bad consequences. So yes, there are consequences, but it is such a toxic thing when Christians look at other Christians, and when something bad happens in their life, our instant thought is, oh, they must not be right with the Lord. This must be a result of their sin. They must not have prayed hard enough. They must not have loved the Lord enough. They must not have blah, 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 blah. That is such a toxic thing, and it's not even true. It's not biblical. Bad things happen. We live in a bad world, a sinful world. These bad things are a result of sin entering the world. It's not always a result of someone's personal sin. You even saw that in this book, God allowed those things to happen to Job, and Job was a righteous man. Job was right with the Lord. And so this wasn't a result of his sin. This was a result of God telling a bigger story and God's name being glorified. And so it's just a nice reminder to me that though the world and people in it may look at your bad situation and only see bad, that you have the ability to see good and think of it in a godly perspective, that a bigger story is being told. Number 4, the thing I wanted to point out is that it says Job gets angry. It says Job accuses God, but it also says that Job never sinned in what he did. And so I just want to say that we have every right to get upset with God and to cry out angry prayers and to cry out upset and hurting prayers when that is the condition of your heart. If you are hurting, if you are angry or confused, express that. Job never sinned in what he said, and you guys should really read what he said, because it is like he was upset. He was depressed, and he expresses that to God. And he does not hold back. And it says that he never sinned in what he said. And I think that we're kind of holding out on that level of intimacy in fear of, sinning. But God wants to know every emotion that's going on in your heart. He knows what's going on anyways. So if you're angry but praying like a righteous little happy prayer, He knows you're angry. So why not just express it? Express your feelings to God. It is a relationship. You need to communicate, and He wants to guide you through it. Number 5 is Job's friends. These were his close friends. They didn't give him godly wisdom. And so I wanted to point out that not always will your close circle of people that you trust, people that also know the Lord, and people that love you and you love them, they're not always going to have godly advice and godly wisdom to offer to you. And so we can't depend solely on the people around us to speak into our walk with the Lord and into our situations. We should first rely on what we know as truth and what we know from the Bible. Rely on God alone, because sometimes our friends and our family, whether or not they know it, are going to speak lies over us. And that's exactly what Job's friends were doing. They thought they were helping, but they were not speaking truthfully about the Lord to him. And had he chosen to believe them, it could have really affected the outcome of this whole story. I also wanted to point out lastly what Elihu says about God. He points out it is that we can never know God's ways. We can never understand God's ways. His ways are holy, ours are not. We'll never know fully why God does what he does until maybe we get to heaven and we can ask him that. And we waste a lot of time trying to understand, but at the end of the day, just understand that he is good, his ways are good, and his will and like the reason behind the things that he does will always be better than the reason behind what we're doing. And it's okay to wonder why, but you have to also be okay with not always getting an answer of why. You may never see the end result of why you went through something, because you could have gone through that thing so that someone out here watching could be changed by it. And you may never know that they were changed by it, but just trust that something good comes out of everything. I hope you guys got something out of this little truly a summary. I know it was probably still a long video, but it truly is just a summary. There's so much in this book. A lot of you guys have asked me to do kind of a study like I did in the book of James and break it down chapter by chapter. I didn't feel comfortable doing that because I still know that there's a lot in this book that I need to understand, and I need to continually be rereading over the book of Job. But I hope you guys enjoy. Please give it a thumbs up. It helps support my channel a lot. Make sure you hit the subscribe button if you haven't already to join the Happy Soul Tribe. And make sure you go out of your way today to love on someone and make them feel extra special just because they are. I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye, guys.